Just smell that fresh air, Rachel.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty nice out here. I've got to admit.
I know. I'm so glad I decided to do this week's episode in the forest, you know? A place that is honestly just so beautiful, especially at night, I would assume. I have never actually been in the forest at night. In fact, this is my first time in a forest at all. But I can only imagine it gets more beautiful when bathed under moonlight, when only the glowing eyes of predator animals could even see us. I didn't bring a tent because I figured we'd want to look up at the stars and said killing eyes.
There's so much to unpack there.
No, there isn't, because I didn't bring us any food or weapons to protect ourselves either. Honestly, we've really packed, in my opinion, very svelte. I feel good about it. How about you?
This podcast is about why horror scares us. What deep, dark, secret, scary cinema shines a light on. The discussions are frank and involve conversations about abuse, trauma, and mental health. There are also spoilers, so keep that in mind too. Now, sharpen your machetes and straight razors, because this is Cutting Deep into Horror.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cutting Deep into Horror. I am, of course, your host, Enrique Couto, here with my ever-fearful co-host and rugged outdoorswoman, Rachel Rodolfi.
Hey, guys.
And this week we're going to be talking about a movie that neither of us had seen because it was very recent in its release, and it was a recommendation of one of the fans who listen, and a good friend of mine, Nick Click. She recommended this one to us. It's called Dark Nature from 2022. And I do want to mention for those of you out there who have been commenting over on Spotify, I'm reading those comments.
Mm-hmm.
They've been requesting that we review certain films, and we're going to.
Yeah.
Just not today.
Well,
this was actually the first suggestion we got from a fan was to do Dark Nature. So, but Rach, before we go into this, how are you doing?
Doing pretty all right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is it because I made you quesadillas?
Yeah. That definitely didn't hurt.
I cook for you too much. I worry you're going to get spoiled.
Oh, please don't stop.
Because I made you chorizo queso like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Have you eaten your leftovers yet?
Not yet. That's going to be my dinner tomorrow.
It better be.
It's going to be.
Or else. I assume you kept more of it than you gave me to keep for myself. So
I tried to be even.
Did you let your heart weigh it out though instead of your brain? Because your heart is going to want to take more of that cheesy chorizo goodness.
I played the fifth.
But no. I'm glad you're doing well. I am doing pretty well, but I can't lie. Spooky season is the most exciting and stressful time of year for me, and has been most of my life. Mm-hmm. Since my career started out doing horror films, it was the busiest time of the year. It was like, oh, you promote horror movies? Well, then you've got to go to Cleveland and Atlanta and Indianapolis and New York and Philadelphia. And you're like, oh, cool. Oh, that's just in October. Since COVID, that part has chilled out a little bit. I'm not having to hit the road as much, although I'd like to get back on the road a little bit more. Instead, it's the sheer amount of new weekly spooky listeners.
Yeah.
And you know who you are. If you're listening to this right now, you're probably, there's a good chance you're brand new, because when spooky season comes, the weekly spooky listenership elevates so massively. And I've been teasing on the show that October is going to be an unbelievably epic time for weekly spooky. And I'm not kidding. We're going to publish at least 25 times in October.
That's a lot.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that's over 22 times. I was like, it is. It is. But no, we've got so much stuff coming, so much stuff planned, and including at least 2 episodes of Cutting Deep into Horror, where I'll go ahead and mention it now. We are going to talk about Murder Party, one of my all-time favorite Halloween time horror comedies. I like how you're like, yes, you're the one who suggested it.
Well, I can still be excited that we get to watch it again.
I'll have to talk to a lawyer. But maybe, perhaps. But no, we're going to talk about that probably next time you guys hear from us in October. But that being said, I'm spending all of my time, all of the whatever you would call free time, I'm doing air quotes, I was spent almost wholly recording these episodes. Because, I mean, we usually publish maybe 3 times a week. And now we're going to publish like 6 times a week, maybe more.
Yeah.
It's daunting.
It's a lot of talking that you're doing.
Well, I mean, I guess I can get away with that. Got a loud mouth on me, kids. So anyway, we got Dark Nature.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about this movie because Nick Click suggested it. And she's a good pal of ours. We hang out with her at the Cigar Lounge, and she happens to be a fellow spooky.
Yeah.
And speaking of the spookies, if you love what we do here at Weekly Spooky, the horror stories, the talk shows, it's become a whole universe of spooky. You can hang out with other spookies by going on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And typing in Weekly Spookies Tomb of Terror. That's a place where I think now we're at 200 spookies. It might be more. We all hang out and mostly share memes or weird news stories.
Yeah.
It's really fun. And you're a very active contributor on there.
Well, I just love the spooky.
Well, then what are you going to be for Halloween? Oh, I just threw you under the bus so hard.
Please don't. I'm
don't
still
ask me,
not
though.
Sure.
Don't ask me either. I'll kick you in the face.
I know.
So
We're awful.
With that all out of the way, Dark Nature was made in 2022, but released in the United States in 2023. It was actually released May 19th in North America, so I guess it wasn't in Canada earlier. Okay. It's a production from Epic Pictures Group. They are known for Tales of Halloween and many other really fun indie films. But this was a Canadian production, and it had a lot of different types of Canadian money because we were making jokes about how many logos were at the beginning. It just kept going and going and going. But so released in 2023, and it's written and directed by Berkeley Brady in her directorial debut. And Berkeley Brady, I believe, I was trying to do a little dive into her, but I guess she worked in television and did a little bit of like short film work and stuff like that.
Okay.
So, but this is her feature debut, and I think it's a pretty solid debut.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
And it is one of my favorite types of films in general, not just favorite types of horror films. It is a nature survival story.
Yeah.
And I am a sucker for nature survival stories. Give me The Edge with Alec Baldwin and what's his name? Hannibal Lecter.
Oh God. I can see his face, but I can't
Anthony
remember.
Hopkins.
That's it.
For the sake of ambiance, we always do this show together late at night. It's not at all because we're trying to squeeze it into our extremely busy schedules.
No, that's not it. Not
even a little bit. Whoever said that's a jerk. But so we put this one on, and Rach, why don't you run people down on what it's about?
Well, it is not just a nature survival movie, but it's also it dives deep into what it takes to survive abuse, and not just survive abuse, but kind of like thrive afterward.
Well, if you'd mentioned that the setup was that these are all abused women going into the woods, we might have been able to figure that out a little bit faster. What's the synopsis? What's the movie about?
So the synopsis is that there is an abused woman who is finally kind of finagled into going on a wilderness survival retreat by one of her friends. And she's very, very skeptical of all of it. But when she gets there, she starts getting swept up into it a little bit. But then the longer they're there, the more they realize things aren't what they seem. And the woods seem to be a little more hostile than they thought.
Well, and they're not just on a camping trip. It's a therapy camping trip for women who have suffered abuse and trauma.
Yes.
So, yeah, not your average kind of camping trip. And it takes a bit of a, for lack of a better term, kind of a supernatural turn, or maybe it's a extremely natural turn, depending on how you view the world. Because it's all about being on native land in Canada and how this land used to be supported by sacrifices of some sort. And they never mention what kinds of sacrifices. They say offerings.
Yes.
And that does not mean that it was human or animal or living at all. Offerings can be bushels of corn. Offerings can be silver and gold.
Offerings can be your time and effort.
Can they?
I don't know. I'm
Okay.
just saying.
I've not heard that in any of the native stuff I've studied, but that doesn't mean it's not true.
Well, I mean more like in a broad sense, because I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that I was thinking about after the movie, like as I was making my notes. So that's something that I know we're eventually going to talk on.
Sure.
An offering doesn't have to be something physical. It could also just be,
Sentimental?
Yeah, sentimental.
Okay. I could appreciate that.
Good way to put it.
Oh, whenever I get a chance, I use the term sentimental. I think it's always a good idea.
I do it all the time.
I love it. I love that term. So the main character, her name is Joy, and she escapes an abusive boyfriend. You did skip a lot on your synopsis.
I did.
Synopsis. But Joy escapes her abusive boyfriend, Derek, after he attempts to strangle her to death. Mm-hmm. But then she gets away, and then he kills her dog, a little small white fluffy dog.
Yeah.
And that was, I guess, the final straw for her to get the hell out of that relationship.
Yeah, which is fair.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I mean, I have $14,000 in veterinary debt that says I would do anything for my dogs.
Yeah.
So so now we jump ahead the 6 months later, and she's waiting to be picked up by her best friend Carmen, in order to go to this retreat in the woods with the therapist Dr. Dunley.
Yeah.
So, and Dunley specializes in trauma, and in particular in traumatized women.
Yeah.
And then they meet up with, what is her name? Tara.
Yes.
Is already in the car, I believe, or they pick her up. I can't remember.
She was already in the car.
And she is another woman who is a bit catty and a bit distant. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, I would say she's very distant. She's definitely not as catty or as antagonistic as Shayna.
Oh no, Shayna's a jerk.
Yeah.
But with this one, she'll like say things like, yeah, didn't like it's like the ancient symbol that when a hood's up, then don't talk to them, and then she just puts her own hood up. She's just kind of she's guarded is a better way to put it than distant. She's extremely guarded.
Yeah.
And they're driving along in their car. You feel free to take it up from me from here. I'm just kind of setting you up.
Well, as they're driving along, first off, they see a wrecked car on the side of the road, and at that point, nobody else seems to pay attention except Joy a little bit, but she's always on edge. And then a bow hunter steps out into the road, and she starts having a flashback, because we're kind of seeing the world through her eyes. So there's a lot of flashbacks, and there's a lot of, just kind of remembering the trauma. And that was kind of important, because it does kind of show you how bad the relationship was, that it's still affecting her, even though it's been 6 months.
Well, I think that opening scene would affect anybody for a long time.
Yeah. But it kind of shows that it was a long-lasting relationship.
Well, and the thing that caused him to attack her was that she, for a reason that we don't know yet in the film, decided she did not want to be intimate.
Yeah.
They were supposed to have a romantic night together, and then she turned him down for intimacy. And then he got super, super mad. Eventually, he built up and built up and built up. And I want to mention Joy is played by Hannah Emily Anderson, an actress many people may know from Jigsaw, What Keeps You Alive, and the TV series version of The Purge. That's where I knew her the moment we were watching it. I was like, I know her from somewhere. And then I remembered she was in The Purge, the TV series of The Purge, which is excellent, and people should watch it. And I'm still mad that it got canceled.
You are mad about that.
That was such a good show. The second season of The Purge TV series, you don't understand. The second season of The Purge TV series is literally every day that isn't The Purge.
Okay, that's kind of cool,
It's
though.
the entire world building. You get to see how they clean up bodies, how they handle the legal system when it comes back online. They do things like there are these people who rob a bank during the purge.
Ooh.
And because it's legal.
Yeah.
And when the horn or the siren or whatever you want to call it, the horn plays that tells you the purge is over, they're running out of the bank with the money, and literally law enforcement are watching the surveillance video and looking at the time compared to when the sound of the horn sounds, because if they're out of the threshold before the horn sounds, then it's not a crime. But if their foot is still half in the bank when the horn sounds, it's a crime. Like it's the ultimate world building element of the purge.
That's cool.
The movies do a good job, but the TV series really takes it to 11, especially that second season where you see that like they tag and bag people and how like you get a state funded urn with your loved one's ashes in it, which is not your loved one's ashes. It's just some ashes that they have. They like show how it's all done. It's like mass market. It's like McDonald's, but for like, it's just a little thing that says like your family member died on the purge. Thank you for your service to the society. It's a good show. The first season is pretty much like a really long purge movie, but the second season is like the most world buildingest thing ever. So, because literally the first episode, it's like in the first 6 minutes, a purge night ends. And then the 10 episodes is just leading to the next purge night. So good. So good. Sorry. The Purge is one of the best examples of world building we've had in a long time outside of, like Marvel and stuff. Just exquisite world building.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, not to talk about that too much, but I wanted to make sure I gave Hannah Emily Anderson, this is her film, she stars in it. I wanted to make sure I gave her due because her character's exhausted, tormented face.
Yeah.
Something I have not seen at least since I looked in the mirror this morning. Very.
So you found it very relatable.
I just found it very startling.
Yeah.
Much like I do first thing in the morning when I look in the mirror.
Yeah.
But no, so anyway, so they're driving along, they find the car on the side of the road, and then they find the bow hunter. It turns out there's another bow hunter as well, and they claim that they've lost their dog. And immediately Carmen, the friend of our lead character, seems skeptical of the concept that they've lost their dog. I don't exactly, I guess probably just because she's not very trusting of men. Would be my guess.
I don't think any of them are.
Well, no, but I'm talking about she's the one who reacted to it the most, I thought.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. So anyway, please.
So as when they finally arrive, they see Dr. Dunley, and there's one of the participants, one of the women is already there. And as the group is getting ready to go on a hike, Joy just is really very, very hesitant about the whole process and the whole situation. And
yeah, she feels like an outsider very much. She is.
Yeah.
She's the only person there who has not had direct therapy with the doctor.
Exactly. So she's brand new, and she doesn't know anyone in the group, and she doesn't feel like she fits in or she belongs. But Dr. Dunley is able to kind of convince her to go. But that's when Shayna, the participant who is already there, she really starts kind of like really, really roasting Joy.
Yeah, she's very harsh. She was her character, Shayna, and Dr. Dunley both appear to be native in heritage.
Yeah.
By the way, it's worth mentioning because the movie is financed by a grant for native studies or native entertainment or whatever. And it seems like that's why they chose to be out in these woods in particular, because she's like the right-hand woman of Dr. Dunley.
Exactly. She's like the first patient, and so she's the one that kind of has the most experience with Dr. Dunley.
Well, she also has the most damage because she did not come out of just a bad relationship.
No.
She was in war.
Yeah.
2 tours. Did she say Afghanistan, I think, or was it Iraq? I think it was Afghanistan.
I want to say it was Afghanistan.
And so she's got a very like, oh, that's cute, your boyfriend was mean kind of attitude, which is, my first thought was like, what a jerk, you know?
Yeah.
Like a little harsh there, but yeah, so she starts laying into Joy almost immediately, which helps to make her feel very, very comfortable. But luckily Dr. Dunley kind of puts the kibosh on that.
Tells her to stop.
But we'll get to more of that after we take this quick break, and we'll be right back on Cutting Deep into Horror. So we've met our resident bitch character, and I don't think that's harsh or overstating. I think that Shayna is clearly kind of a bitch.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, Tara is the aloof one. Shayna is the one where you're like, man, I just kind of actually hate her because she's not easy to get along with.
No. And I wanted to mention real quick, she's played by Roseanne or Rosanna, depending on how you want to say it, Supernault, and she is a well-known Native American Indian actress.
Oh, cool.
And she was most known as Natalie Stoney in the television series Blackstone, which I have not seen, but I have actually heard is really good. So just want to mention, because she's like definitely playing a heavy, but she's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
You know, she's not mean because she's mean. She's mean because she's just seen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So please.
So as the group's walking along, they find a broken trail cam. And that's when it's kind of revealed that there may possibly be bears in the area.
Oh, yeah. That's when it's first hinted. Yep.
Wild animals. And Joy seems to be the only one who's really like, hey, wait, isn't this a problem? And everyone's like, no.
Bears are a normal part. They live in the woods. Where do you think they live? In the suburbs?
That's when Joy starts having nightmares. And at first they play it off like the nightmares may just be trauma from having like a PTSD
kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. But she starts even in this very first nightmare seeing weird things like in the forest or different scenery that, you know, just has no relation to anything else other than that it's in the forest. So that's the first hint that there may be something else going on.
Right. So the next morning, she and Carmen are performing a trust exercise in the forest.
Yes.
And Joy hears what she is positive is Derek calling her name.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And that would be startling, although I feel like, tell me if you didn't get this vibe. I got the vibe that there was no way he's there.
Yeah, I never thought that he was actually there. I assumed that it was all in her head.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and at first I was kind of wondering if it was going to be like her just going crazy while the rest of the group did not go crazy, and seeing like where that could go. 'Cause it seemed at first that she's the one having nightmares and she's the one hearing things. So I thought that it was going to be all exclusively in her head. So after they're doing the trust exercises, Tara and Shayna, they're the ones who are paired off doing their own trust exercise. And Shayna, who is a real charmer, she starts kind of making fun of Tara and doing a cougar or a puma impersonation.
Well, she starts making the sound and saying, "What is that? What is that? If you don't know what that is, you shouldn't be in the woods," kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Because she was trying to prove like she's way more prepared or something.
I mean, I'd say she has everything to prove. Shayna has pretty much everything to prove, and to nobody but herself.
Exactly. So this like set Tara off though, so she ran off on her own, and she also starts hallucinating now. That's when she has a hallucination that her wrists are bound and that someone's coming at her. But Joy, who would also run off because of her own hallucination, they kind of like bump into each other, and they start comparing notes about like, hey, we're not feeling right out here in the woods. We feel like there's something else maybe going on.
Well, and the other thing that's kind of underwriting all of this is the fact that Joy is pretty much convinced that Dr. Dunley has got them lost. That Dr. Dunley has no idea where they are in the forest. And that's not where you want to be, kids. You don't want to be in that situation.
No, that would not be good. So, unfortunately, though, for Joy, no one else is willing to believe that they need to turn back. So they all keep just going forward.
Well, and her argument that they need to go back is that a boyfriend followed them all the way out there. And also there might be a monster. Like some kind of a bear monster.
Pretty convincing, right?
When you put it like that, I mean, I guess I understand why they didn't immediately do what she asked.
Exactly. So, at this point, they're going downhill a ravine, and Carmen, who I get the feeling that Carmen and Joy have known each other the longest.
Mm-hmm.
Carmen at that point is the one who's really kind of like begging Joy, like, please just keep coming on the trail with us. Like, I know that you don't think that this is going to work, but at least give it a shot. And Joy like really agrees at that point. She's like, okay, like, despite the fact that I'm feeling really weird and I feel like I'm being pursued by my boyfriend, then I guess for your sake, I'm going to keep going on the trail with you.
So as a woman, how do you feel about the way they're depicting this clash of personalities so far?
I mean, I feel like it's pretty fair. Because there is always going to be, in any social group, there is going to be the antagonistic one, the person that feels like they always have something to prove. There's going to be, the person who feels like the outsider and has a hard time blending in.
Sure, definitely.
So I really think that they did a pretty fair job of portraying it. And I think that part of what drew me in with it was really the relationship between Carmen and Joy, because I saw a lot of the good friendships that I've had in the past. I saw that in them. I was like, yeah, that really is like a tough place for both of them to be, because Carmen is the one who really wants to see Joy thrive, and Joy is the one who doesn't feel like she can because of all of the baggage that she's carrying with her. So, and having them try to work through all of this set in the wilderness, I thought that was a pretty interesting backdrop, because it was kind of like their journey through the wilderness was also their journey through all the trauma that Joy had survived and kind of coming out to the other side.
And the doctor even references that when they look at steep hills or deep inclines or what have you, that you'll be surprised what you are actually capable of, is what she tells Joy.
Yeah. When
Joy's just like, we have to go down that hill or whatever. She's like, you'd be surprised what you can actually do. Which I think makes sense from a therapy standpoint.
Oh, yeah. Very
Very much. Just sounds like something I would hear a therapist say, So, so I like that element quite a bit. Although there is this sense of paranoia that Joy kind of instills in the audience, where we kind of wonder if Dr. Dunley is a quack, and we kind of wonder why Shayna's such a jerk, and why what's her name? Tara is like so distant and weird. Cause she really is.
Yeah.
Like way out. And, and then of course Carmen also seems to be kind of carrying a lot.
Yeah.
Cause help me remember, did they reference what her deal was? I mean, they referenced that she had like a really bad situation a long time ago.
Yeah. It was that she had a really bad situation a long time ago. And from what I gathered, part of the reason that she was carrying so much is because she was just so fed up of everything that Joy had been going through because it reminded her so much of what she had already
there's a
gone
lot of
through.
resentment towards Joy going on her part.
Oh, absolutely. And they even address that in the last act of the movie.
Yes, they do.
So again, that's why I feel like that relationship in particular was the strongest one for me. And that's the one that really carried the movie for me. Was those two really had a lot of chemistry together that I think worked really well.
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely agree.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the only ones who are like longtime friends as well. Their characters are. So now what's happening now? We've had the hallucination experience. Mm-hmm. We've had the infighting about, are we lost? Should we turn back? And everybody's like, no, we can't turn back because, the whole point is to put ourselves out there, to take chances, to risk something so that we feel alive.
Yeah. And, now that they are finally on the same page that they're going to stay on the trail and they're going to keep going on, they're sitting around the campfire and it's kind of a breakthrough moment for Joy as they're sitting there talking. And, they're kind of, again, Joy being the outsider, it's referenced very subtly, but it's done very well because they're all talking about kind of like how bad Shayna's trauma was or how bad Tara's trauma was. And there's always this little bit of question of whether Joy's trauma was bad enough. Mm-hmm. And she starts getting down on herself because of how many times she forgave her ex and said, no, you can come back. But she talks about like she could have done things better and there's more that she could have done that would have kept the relationship going. And I thought that was interesting because then a little while later, she and Dr. Dunley are talking about the hallucinations that she's having and all the things that are going on in the woods. And Dr. Dunley, she says that she feels that this is all safe. And Joy says like, well, I think basically that you're crazy. I think you brought us all out here because you thought it's a quick way to make a buck and you think we don't know any better, basically. And Dr. Dunley said, well, I want you to know, like, your greatest fear is that I'm fooling you, but my greatest fear is that I would hurt one of my patients, and I would never do that. And that's why I bring them here, is because it's sacred land. And she explains, like, the natives used to bring offerings to a spirit that lived on this land, and that spirit would offer, like, healing blessings. And Joy asks, well, what happened to the spirit when people stopped giving it blessings? And Dr. Dunley said, oh, well, that's a good question. And you and I both kind of looked at each other and we're like, oh, there's
I loved
something.
that answer. All she said was, that's a good question. And that was it. And I liked that moment because it's like, yeah, I mean, well, but also I kind of got that as a shrugging, like, nobody really believes in any of this anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
It's all symbolic now. But I did like that, and that hint about what is up in the nature with the area, mm-hmm. with the forest, with the woods, is extra interesting because now we're pretty deep into the movie, you know, and there's been almost no monster, just these hallucinations, these more real, like grounded in reality fears, which I can appreciate. Mm-hmm. I like a good reality based fear.
Yeah.
And now we're at a point where what we're really worried about is, do we know who these people are that we're hanging out with? Do we know who these people are that Joy is with? And what is going on? Like, is her boyfriend tracking her and these women through the woods? And I get why Dr. Dunley's not even freaked out, because she's like, even if he is, like, there are 4 of us.
Yeah.
And one of us is a friggin' army veteran, and she'll just knock him down and break his larynx, and I don't blame her for feeling that way. I get what she's throwing down.
Yeah.
So now though, things start to get a little bit scarier.
Yeah. Well, it begins to escalate when that night Joy has a nightmare, and she kind of gets up and has to walk it off basically, and notices that everyone else is awake too. And everyone else starts talking about they're having nightmares, and they all start describing the same exact nightmare. And so they start to realize that, okay, it's not just that Joy is kind of having like these PTSD flashbacks, and it's not just that, Tara's having her, whatever is going on with her. This is something that's going on with the whole group. And so now everyone else is starting to get more on edge, except for Dr. Dunley.
Yeah.
But all the other women are really starting to get on edge, because now it's not just one person. It's the whole group.
They're all kind of shaken by that reality. So now the next morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bit of a concerning surprise that they discover first thing in the morning. And we'll get to that right after this quick break. And we are back. And now, what has happened in the what have they realized as they've woken up?
Well, they've realized there's two things missing.
Okay.
First thing that's missing is Tara. Nobody knows where she is.
That's not that big a deal.
No. What is important, though, is all the food is gone.
Oh, well, that would be a problem.
And that obviously creates quite a problem, because some of them think that they should just head back immediately because they're already, 2, 3, several days out.
Yeah.
So without that food, they're not going to last very long. But especially Dr. Dunny, she does not want to leave Tara alone. And Carmen wants to go search for Tara with Dr. Dunny. But Dr. Dunny says, basically she's the only one who understands the true depths of Tara's trauma. So she's the only one who could kind of understand where Tara's headspace is at this point.
Well, and Tara was already kind of enigmatic and distant and hard to read.
Yeah.
So the fact that she disappeared and potentially took all their food too, questionable.
Yeah. It's not a good sign.
No, and leaving her alone would not be the wisest move either.
No. So they kind of decide to look for her. But Dr. Dunny, against better judgment, she goes off on her own. And pretty much immediately they start hearing, screaming and some not so good noises. So they go running after her. So it's Carmen and Shayna and Joy. And Shayna is kind of beside herself because Dr. Dunny is kind of like her rock because of all the things she's been through and that Dr. Dunny has helped her through. So she's really beside herself. So they kind of come up to the top of a hill, and Shayna runs up to the top of the hill, and there's blood everywhere, or at least there might be blood everywhere. And we see kind of a dismembered leg, and then Shayna starts having a really bad flashback of her experiences of what she saw overseas. And that was kind of like a redeeming moment. At least for me, that was a redeeming moment for her, because you start to see the depths of really, it's not an excuse to be an asshole, but you see the depths of the darkness she's going through that cause her to be such an asshole.
Sure, definitely. She gets her due. Yeah,
exactly. So, she gets her due, but unfortunately, in, her kind of state, she falls down off the edge of the cliff and kind of meets her end. And,
which I didn't love. I felt like it was kind of a sudden cop-out thing.
I felt like she deserved a little bit more.
But at the same time, yeah, I do get why they had to dispatch of her quickly, because you had to leave the most sitting duck characters
Exactly.
to fend for themselves.
Exactly. And she was like one of the most competent as far as like defending herself. So I kind of get why you've got to pick her off. So that really just leaves like Joy and Carmen kind of on their own at that point. So they hear more screaming and more wailing, and they follow it and they find a cave.
Yes, and as you would expect, you gotta go in. But in their defense, they're not just dumb horror movie people. They do hear
they hear
calling
something.
out.
Yeah, like they know someone is in there.
And they're desperately looking for someone.
Right. Well, because they can't get back on their own. Like, it's not like they're wilderness survival people.
Yeah, but neither, I mean, well, I guess they're hoping to get Dunley too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she might be able to get them out.
Exactly. So I think they're kind of hoping for her.
I mean, I would hope for a satellite phone. I recommend Iridium.
Well, you always hope for Iridium.
We're not sponsored by Iridium yet, but Iridium satellite phones, they always work because of eccentric orbits. You can talk about it for hours.
I know.
I read the book about it.
I know, you did. You were so excited when you read that book.
It's a really good book. Anyway.
Okay, so they go into the cave and they definitely see like bloody tracks. So they know that someone is in there. And they do at least grab for some protection. They like grab some sticks and stuff. And as
I mean, yeah, the most the best attempt they could cull together. They grab some big sticks.
Well, when all else fails, there's big sticks.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all.
So they do manage to find Tara in the cave, and she's not doing great. Carmen makes Joy take Tara and kind of like press on to like make their escape so that Carmen can stay down there and find Dr. Dunley. And then while Carmen is down there, she does find Dr. Dunley, and she sees her down at like the bottom of this pit, and she reaches down to like kind of grab her, and then this hideous monster comes out of the darkness.
Yes.
And grabs the doctor and just kind of like scuttles away into the shadows with her.
How would you describe the monster, you personally?
Well, it was semi-humanoid, but not human. And it was like really dark, kind of like a shadow creature sort of thing going on. And it definitely seemed like it was inspired by like, Wendigo or Skinwalkers or something like that. Like it had that kind of inspiration to it, but it was just kind of like a humanoid shadow creature.
Honestly, I thought it kind of looked like a, for lack of a better term, I thought it kind of looked like a regular human-sized Sasquatch almost.
Yeah, kind of, I could see that. Yeah. Yeah. Because it was like dark and kind of hairy and
it looked very human-like.
Yes,
but definitely not any person you'd ever want to meet or had ever met.
No, I wouldn't want to. No, personally, if I could get away with it.
Fair enough.
So Joy and Tara are able to make their escape, but obviously Tara's severely injured, so it's not like they can get far. Carmen is able to make her own escape out a different exit, but she's got to like jump down kind of like a small waterfall, and while she still gets into the river, she like shreds her legs on like these river rocks. So now she's injured too.
Yeah.
And yeah, that kind of like got me when she like...
Yeah, well, it's that thing. It's like you can watch a horror movie and somebody can get decapitated and you're like, yeah, that's gross. But then if they cut themselves shaving, you're like, Jesus!
Yeah, like, no!
Or they rip a hangnail out.
Yeah.
And you're like,
No.
Stop the pain! Because it's like...
the torture.
The more you can identify with the pain, the more it's going to make you wince and cower.
Exactly.
So, a severely skinned knee, a finger in a car door, those are the things in movies that will legit make a whole audience wince. When I premiered Babysitter Massacre, there was a scene where Achilles tendons get slit.
Oh yeah.
And I guess that's a very identifiable experience because the whole crowd went like all at once when that knife swooped across those Achilles tendons. So it's, there you have it.
I remember the first time I saw that scene. It made me wince.
And it was the easiest effect ever.
You're so proud of that.
Didn't even do any effects. It's just the flat of the knife reveals the makeup. That's all it is.
So smart.
And a sound effect.
Well, the sound effect is what sells it.
The effects artist on that just did not believe it would work at all. It was Erica. You know Erica.
Yeah.
She did not believe it would work at all. She was so confused. She was like, but how is it going to cut her leg? And I'm like, just do what I say. There's no time.
Trust me.
You don't even have to trust me. Just do what I say.
Oh, but speaking of sound effects, though,
yeah,
that is one thing that I wanted to mention is there's a common element of Joy's hallucinations in this movie is, her boyfriend always had a Zippo lighter that when he would get irritated, he would like click the Zippo until he would lash out and beat her. So you're always hearing like this click click of the Zippo during her hallucinations, but it was really cool because yeah, exactly.
It's a tin of mustache wax. Shut up.
But it still works. Now you're a Foley artist.
Yeah, not the first time, won't be the last either.
So I thought it was cool because at first it was kind of like just a sound effect motif, but then around about halfway through the movie, it started kind of bleeding into the music a little bit, where it was becoming a little bit part of like...
It was becoming percussion.
Part of the percussion.
Yeah,
I thought that was just a really cool, creative choice.
I've always liked when artists blur the lines. Like, James Cameron has said on Terminator 2 that he can't tell you what is the score and what is the sound design, because he doesn't know. Because Brad Fiedel, who did the music on Terminator 2, he would use so many like industrial sounds and metallic sounds in the score.
Yeah.
That he was like, I don't know who did this at all. I just know that it works and that I like it.
Yeah.
And that's all he's got.
Well, he's right.
I mean, well, for, James Cameron might be right every now and then. I don't know. But I agree. I like that level of creativity in the score. They kind of they turned that clicking sound that makes you uneasy into a part of the music, which makes you even more uneasy.
Exactly.
Because the music is mostly following the monster, which was a tradition started with Jaws and continued with Friday the 13th, that music will often follow the monster.
Yeah.
Although then you talk to Harry Manfredini, who did the music on Friday the 13th, and he'll say that they just only wanted to pay for 30 minutes of music.
They're all good answers.
They're great answers. They're all phenomenal answers, and I believe they're all true. That's the best part, especially the ones that contradict each other.
Oh, those are the fun ones.
Well, in Deep Space Nine, one of the greatest moments in Star Trek Deep Space Nine is when he says, "Garrick, I have to know, is it all true?" And he said, "Yes." And he was like, "What about the lies?" And he said, "Especially the lies." That's one of my favorite lines ever. Especially the lies. So anyway, we're talking about a movie, though.
Oh, yeah, that thing.
I think that this show would be completely derailed if I didn't go on wild movie tangents.
That's kind of why everyone's here, right?
Maybe. I think the Weekly Spooky audience has learned, like, wow, he is really a movie nerd, like deeply a movie nerd. So we're getting into, things are getting hairy, pardon the expression.
Things are not looking great.
The villain's not a nice dude.
No.
He's not trying to be helpful.
And he's possibly even scarier than Derek the X.
Oh, I think he's way scarier than Derek the X. No offense to the actor who played him, but because I think he just did a really good job. But he's just this wispy bitch of a man, like I'm just saying, like,
yeah, he was not immediately threatening.
Well, but I think that's the point. I think he was actually really well cast. I think that the idea was, let's get a guy who's just like a skinny, like relatively well put together, but not so well put together that you would think he's vain guy who would totally just be somebody's boyfriend.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
oh, I met Tina at Pilates and there's her boyfriend, Derek. And it's just a dude.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So when he has this like severe anger problem and he's going to hurt his girlfriend and he kills her dog, you're just like, I wasn't expecting that. You know, I was expecting him to just kind of be a wafy white dude. You know, I wasn't expecting him to be so dark.
Exactly.
So I do think that that's on purpose. So yeah, I mean, I find him about as threatening as a cloudy day. But you know, as we get to know the relationship between him and Joy, it does definitely make it scarier.
Yes.
And to me, the depiction of abuse is pretty fair in the film.
I agree.
I found that there were a few elements that really stuck out to me. One of them was Joy references that she put Derek through so much.
Exactly.
And I actually really wish they'd expanded on that a little bit more. I wish they'd let her kind of speak to that a little bit more. Am I wrong?
No, I think so. Because I think that was one of the scenes that I referenced earlier, where they were all sitting around the campfire and they were asking, like, how many chances did you give him? And she's like, well, I could have given more because I already put him through so much. And it's like, yeah,
but they never said what she put him through.
Exactly.
I mean, I assume whatever it is, it wasn't that bad.
No,
or
but
it was reasonable.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, when you're in the mindset of someone who has been abused, you feel like you're the problem because that's what the abuser has been telling you, is that you are the problem.
Well, and I mean, this is a very unpopular truth, but a lot of abusive relationships go both ways. Now, there may be one person who is far more the aggressor or far more the violent one. That's for sure. But abused people tend to throw fists back. Yeah. And there's a reason they both stay. And it's because they're like addicted to that toxicity.
Yes.
You know, I always tell people when I'm talking about this kind of level of like personal stuff, I always tell them, like, remember, it is totally possible to get addicted to poison. I mean, literally, not figuratively. It is also possible figuratively, but literally you can consume small doses of poison again and again and again and again and get your body used to it.
Yep. To
where you crave it. And then take it away, and you'll go through withdrawals from a thing that's trying to kill you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a great thought experiment about being in an abusive situation.
Absolutely.
So, and that's why I was like, I kind of wish she'd said what she threw his way. Like, maybe she was distant or cold or something, and she thought that validated his anger. I don't think it did.
No.
You know, I mean, you know, there's no law against being not a great girlfriend, you know, like, and there's no right to
thank goodness.
And there's unless we're talking about the Bible where it's like the stick has to be no wider than the 3 fingers, I think it was, or something like that. The switch. It's, you know, there's no law that says that if you don't get what you want out of a relationship, you're allowed to stick around and just, you know, scare it out of them or beat it out of them or whatever it is.
Exactly.
So just because she could have any degree of culpability, that doesn't mean that it excuses what happened. It just kind of sets the stage more accurately.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing I kind of wish is I did get a little annoyed that they didn't expand on what she put him through. I mean, they did kind of, but not really. We'll get to that in a minute. But like, yeah. I kind of wish they'd expanded on that more because instead it just felt kind of like a throwaway like thing that everybody always says, which is like, I put them through so much, but I was like, what did she do though?
Yeah, well, because it does make the landscape of the relationship more clear.
Yeah.
Because then you would understand, like, oh, you know, is Derek reactive? Is he reacting to things that she's done?
Yeah,
and
like
that's why he's always, you know, beating her and killing her dog. Or
well, and the reference is that it appeared like that time he strangled her was a first.
It did.
Like that was the final escalation.
Yeah, but
he clearly had been like angry and aggressive and
he would yell at her and throw things.
Yeah. So there's no doubt about that. But it does make me wonder. It does sincerely make me wonder, like, what was she referring to? And I wish that it was in the movie because I would love to have had a better, clear vision because they also don't really reference, to my recollection, they don't reference at all why she was romantically distant
Yeah.
And my only guess would be that it was chicken or the egg. It was like, she was distant because he's such a shit. But the way they presented us to us, we only saw him be mad because she was distant.
Exactly.
So it's like, is it just that it's a feedback loop? And it could very well be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But so I would have loved to have had a little bit more of that. And that's where this gets into the territory of, what cutting deep into horror is all about, which is getting into the heavily human emotional element of the story.
Yeah.
And that's why I wish I had gotten more. Because I would love to know what their fights were about. I would love to know how long they were together exactly, how bad he was, how it escalated, because it always starts somewhere and ends somewhere.
Exactly.
All things do.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been in a pretty abusive relationship, and it definitely, it's little things first.
Mm-hmm.
You get insulted, you get shoved, get swatted, especially if you're a guy, because women can just haul off and whack you, and people all laugh and shrug it off. And yeah, maybe it didn't hurt you very much, but it scares you.
Yeah.
And, stuff like that. I mean, I'm not trying to get super hyper dark. I'm just saying, like, they're all the same and that they're all different, if that makes any sense at all. And it might not. And that's okay, because we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get back and talk a little bit more about these young women who are going to be facing their fears in the woods when we return. So now the young ladies in Dark Nature. Not all of them, though, because we're missing two now? Two down?
Yeah, we're missing Shayna and Dr. Dunley.
Right,
so
and we've got Tara and Joy and Carmen.
Yep.
Man, I'm actually getting really good with their names.
Just in time to almost be done with the movie.
That's the way it always works. I knew the lead character and the host's name for like 3 days after that show, and now it's gone forever. So... But okay, so now it's basically now it's just become a hunt.
Yeah. Because the creature's hunting them, and they're stuck in the river.
Yes.
And obviously can't get very far because 2 of the 3 are injured.
And the thing does not seem to like the water very much.
No.
Which is an interesting choice, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
Because in folklore, water is often a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
It's often a kind of a thing that keeps spirits away.
Yeah.
The first example I have in my mind is Night of the Demons, where there's an underground stream around the wall of Hull House, and that's what keeps the spirits from crossing.
Yes.
So that was my first thought about why it might not like the water. It might be there's like a purification element or something, because the vibe I'm getting from this monster is that if it is not a very mortifying person, which I don't think it is, but if it's not, then it's some kind of a representation of this spiritual element, the spiritual inhabitants of these native lands, native woods, however you want to look at it.
That's the vibe I got.
That's what I was getting too. So, but clearly, well, and I want to mention that that's one of the reasons I think that's the accurate is that the damn thing looks like it's starving.
Yeah, exactly.
It's emaciated, and which I think may be why you got Wendigo vibes. I didn't get Wendigo vibes personally, but that's, I mean, happens to everybody. But no, I think it might be why you got Wendigo vibes, because Wendigo tend to be, they eat and eat and eat, and they get skinnier and skinnier and skinnier.
Exactly. Well, and that goes back to, that's why I thought that the theme of having sacrifice not necessarily just be like food or something. It can also be the time or the energy that you give to something. I thought that was an underlying theme of the movie, also because of the way the monster looked, the way it fed, because it just wanted whatever it could get. And that kind of tied back into just in an abusive relationship, the abuser just kind of like takes whatever they can get.
Oh, okay. And I hadn't thought about that.
They like you as long as they're giving you stuff, but once you
as long as they're getting stuff.
Yeah, as long as they're getting stuff, but once you stop, that's when they become vengeful. So I thought that was kind of a neat tie-in there with
that's
that
really interesting.
Spirit
I didn't think about that at all.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying it wasn't there. I just had not even considered it. That's really interesting. Like what happens when you stop giving it offerings?
Yeah.
Well, then it gets desperate, gets angry, gets hungry.
Exactly.
Wow. So what you're telling me right now on Cutting Deep into Horror, Rachel Rodolphe, who lives outside of Dayton, Ohio, is that Native American religious beliefs are the same as abusive boyfriends. Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You
100%.
Here's her phone number real quick. But I think that's a really, really awesome take. And I had not considered that at all.
Well, thank you.
I had kind of, I didn't adore this movie out and out. I thought that it had a lot to like in it.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
I like the concept of like abused women going into the woods to be strong. And one thing I want to say about this movie, and I mean this with love, it was not a cringy movie.
No, it was good.
It wasn't like girl power for the sake of girl power. It wasn't like, oh, these women are so strong just because they're women. They were three-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
They were super interesting, and you wanted them to get better from their problems. Mm-hmm. I found Joy super likable while also being pathetic and sad.
Yeah.
And again, all of this is a compliment to the actress and to the director. I thought that she was like hard to like and then extremely likable very quickly.
Yeah, because once you cracked her nut and you kind of saw what she was, not just what she was going through, because again, you get that from the first 5 minutes of the movie, but when you start seeing her relationships with other people and that she has a big heart and really start seeing what makes her tick as a person.
She's also kind of a reluctantly natural leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I feel like maybe that, I don't know, maybe that threatened, what was her name? Shauna?
Yeah, Shayna.
Sorry. Gee. She's dead anyway. Who cares? So, but no, so that's a really interesting point. So it's almost like this nature is like an abusive relationship. If you stop giving what it wants, then it just takes what it can get.
Exactly.
That's a really awesome take.
See, there's a reason. There's a reason you tolerate me.
False. No, but that's a really good take. Gosh, cause you, every now and then you get one over on me. Every now and then I blew your mind on Barbarian though.
Oh
so
man,
I'm proud
you
of that
really
one.
did. Yeah.
But no, that's the fun of this. That's why we are doing the show, is like, there's something so satisfying about when you crack that nut of like, here's what the movie is to me. And it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. Joe Bob Briggs said it best when I forget what movie he was talking about, but they were like, well, the screenwriter says, like, doesn't matter. Once the art is out in the world, the screenwriter's intention is null and void. It's only trivia what they were going for. The reality is whatever people are taking from it.
Exactly.
So with that being said, with this concept to you, and now pretty much to me as well, that this is a metaphor.
Yes.
The women are in the water. They're in like a cage made out of, is it like a dam?
I think it was a beaver lodge.
I thought it was like a beaver lodge. That's the term. Yeah. So with Norbert and Dilbert, or Dilbert or Norbert and what was the other one?
Daggett and Norbert.
Yeah. Angry beavers. So they're in this beaver lodge, and apparently this can't get them. I'm guessing because it's in the water.
Yeah.
And it's like a cage of just thrown together pieces of wood.
Yeah, so it can't quite reach through.
Right.
And that's where Tara kind of gets her like hero moment. Cuz Tara is way more injured than Carmen.
Severely injured.
Yeah.
And they're in freezing cold water.
Mm-hmm.
She's bleeding a lot. And for those of you who are like me, not much of an outdoors person, the last thing you want to do when you have a severe cut is just dunk it in fresh water.
Yeah, no.
And I don't mean fresh water like from the store. I mean fresh water like a freshwater lake, a freshwater river. It's dirty. It's gross. You're going to get a brain amoeba. I keep saying this. When Dave,
you and brain amoebas.
Dave always laughs because like I go, when I watch a movie when somebody dives, like dunks their whole head into like an like fresh water anywhere. I'm like, brain amoeba. But Michelle from Monthly Spooky, she gets me.
Yeah,
She
you
thinks
guys-
brain amoeba every time.
Yeah, you guys are so scared of those brain amoebas.
Hey, you think that's funny? How about I'll tell you what. I'm going to make you a promise. From now on, I'm going to send you every time I see a news story about somebody getting a brain-eating amoeba so you can see why it's so scary.
Please don't.
One time it happened at Disneyland. When they used to have the log like adventure place that had actual water in it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, somebody got a brain-eating amoeba there and died.
Cool.
Rachel loves her Disney World land place.
You don't even know.
I don't know. What, you spend $80 on a taco? Get out of here. So Tara's in a bad way, and she makes the decision, which, while I thought was very good for her character, was a little cliche, to sacrifice herself to save them. And one thing that drove me crazy in this scene, though, was that when she like went out from under the beaver lodge and just lets the creature grab her, it like starts ripping into her and murdering her, and the two girls are just sitting in the beaver lodge looking at each other, and all I could think was like, you should have been running.
Get out. We were both screaming at the screen, like, go. Like, don't waste this. Don't waste this.
Move on. What is wrong with you bastards? Oh,
so despite them being dumb and not immediately hoofing it, they did actually escape.
Yes.
And they get to the tents because they kind of like backtrack a little bit. They get to the tents so that at least they can get like a medical kit and like get supplies and kind of
and regroup.
Yeah. Well, you would need to.
Absolutely. I would say so. Whenever I fight some kind of ancient native spirit, I need to just a minute, maybe some chamomile tea or something.
Cliff Bar.
Ooh. Well, I like Luna bars, even though they're for girls because they taste better.
No, I like the Cliff Bars.
Of course you do.
So, that was another scene where you really start to see kind of a lot about Joy as an individual and Joy with her ex, and also the relationship between Joy and Carmen, because they're kind of like stitching up Carmen's leg. And Joy finally admits that she actually didn't break up. Like, she kind of sort of broke up with Derek.
No, she broke up with him, and he didn't see her for 6 months. But the night before
that's what it was.
They were going to pick her up, she let him come over. And I guess they hinted at that they slept together.
Yeah. Because he was still there the next morning.
Yes, and this is where a pretty big twist occurs. I'm going to let you have it.
So, through, like, flashbacks, it is revealed that Derek was still there the morning she was getting ready to leave for the retreat. And big surprise there, he hasn't really actually changed.
No. No. And she even tries to explain to him, like, no, we're not back together. Like,
this was a
were
one-time
always
thing.
begging me to let me to come in and blah, blah, blah. And I just kind of did.
Yeah. So, of course, this sets him off. And he, goes to hit her. And she grabs, it looked like was it a wine glass or just like a regular glass?
I thought it was like a bottle or something. Yeah.
And just smashes it over his face and defended herself. And it's kind of insinuated that that's like what she was doing immedially before she got in the van with everybody. And that really made sense then, because when we were watching the movie, when we first met Joy like on the van, I was like, man, that costume artist like really went heavy-handed. The makeup artist went heavy-handed,
big bags
with
around her
huge
eyes,
raccoon eyes.
Yeah.
I was like, why? Like, I get she's a battered woman, but 6 months out, like, you'd think she'd be in a little better shape.
Sure.
And that flashback, I was like, oh, that's why she was in such rough shape, is because like she's not feeling great because she's, just saw Derek again.
And maybe murdered him. That's the biggest reveal of the whole thing is she clocks him. He falls to the ground, pool of blood forming under his head. That doesn't mean he's dead, but that means that he could be dead.
He could be dead.
Like, she just left.
Yeah.
And that is such a cool reveal, because now it makes sense why she would, number one, think he might have followed her out there, is that he could be that angry that she not only clocked him, but left him to die, or left him without even caring if he was alive. And then number two, the guilt that she might have killed him.
Yeah.
Is why she's hearing him and seeing him everywhere she looks.
Exactly.
And that was a really sweet twist.
Yeah.
And I have to say, please.
Oh, well, and I was just going to say that again, that though also ties into saying like everybody else doesn't know what she did to him. You start to understand like, oh, well, at the very least she slashed up his face, or he could be dead. Like
I got the vibe he was dead.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean he has to be dead, but
that's what I read.
Yeah, I got the sense he was DED dead.
So after that like little flashback, Carmen flips her lid and says that she can't continue to be friends with Joy.
Well, she said that she was considering, she had already been at her limit.
Yeah.
She'd been thinking about it. Yeah. That she was just like done dealing with her crap.
Exactly. And this is like the final straw. So, they kind of like try to go to bed, but it's not going to work because it's kind of scary out there. So they decide to make a break for it in the woods, and the monster captures Carmen. So now Joy's on her own, and she has to save Carmen on her own. So she goes back to the cave, which is kind of like what we understand as being the monster's lair.
Yeah.
And is following like some screaming and howling and noises. And again, you're starting to question, like, is it hallucinations? Is it the spirit? Like, what is going on? What does she actually hear? And then it made us both squirm even more because she's got to like climb through this really, really claustrophobic tunnel.
She's basically spelunking. She's crawling through an incredibly getting tighter by the second cave tunnel that has blood and bones
and like viscera.
Yeah, viscera is the perfect word. Ugh.
But she gets through it, and she finally sees the monster, and then it looks like Derek to her. And I thought that was pretty genius storytelling, because it looks like Derek and she like embraces it. And there's that moment where you think like, oh no, like what is she going to do? Like they've kind of set up that she's got this on again, off again thing with Derek.
Yeah, so she's completely addicted to him.
So it's like, is she falling for that addiction again?
Yeah.
And she embraces it, and then her flashbacks kind of start to like intertwine with reality, but then she gains control of herself and she just stabs it in the face.
She just
again going back to
imagining that it's Derek, who she might have murdered. So she stabs it.
She stabs it.
Ancient creature.
And she sprays it down with a can of
bear spray, which they were constantly referencing, that they all had cans of bear spray or bear mace, whatever you want to call it. And this was the only moment that you and I were like, because generally speaking, aerosol sprays like that are not flammable once they're out of the can.
Exactly.
She did not turn it into a flamethrower. She sprayed it down, and then she had his Zippo.
Yep.
Because all along she had that Zippo. Because she took it from him after she possibly murdered him.
Yeah.
And if you're getting excited about finding out whether she killed him or not, TS. Anyway, so now she's lit this guy like a Roman candle. He's burned. She stood up to the symbol of Derek as well as the actual Derek.
Yeah.
Although maybe in the most felonious way possible, which is not ideal, but hey,
it's a step in the right direction.
Shit happens when you party naked, man. So and now she's able to get her friend Carmen, and they get in the car. I want to mention, I got a chuckle out of this. They both looked like malted milk duds. I mean, they were like filthy, dirty,
they
hurt.
looked grimy and disgusting.
And then she's like, we have to go home. And she says, no, I'm taking you to the hospital. I'm like, no shit, the hospital. How could you not think the hospital first? But there is that element of like, but you have to know, like, did you even kill Derek? And it's like, I'll find out.
Yeah, but
when I find
would
out.
I would go to the hospital first.
Yeah. And then that's pretty much the movie.
Yeah. And I felt like you said, it wasn't cringy.
Yeah,
It wasn't
not at all.
preachy or like girl power just for girl power's sake or whatever.
It was good characters who happened to be women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt like all of them were three-dimensional, and I also felt like it was very well paced. I don't think there wasn't a ton of wasted movement.
I would call it thoughtfully paced.
Yes.
Because it's not fast.
No.
But it's not super slow, but it keeps a consistent build.
Yeah.
That I really enjoyed.
Exactly.
And I love any movie about, people fighting the elements and stuff. I just find that stuff super, super fun.
Oh, yeah. Well.
So, but no, so I mean, this is not like a 4 or 5 star movie for me, but it's definitely worth watching. Had a really good time watching it.
Yeah.
I should have mentioned at the beginning, it's available on Amazon Prime. You can watch it on Tubi. It's out there if you want to see it. And if you just listen to this, you basically saw the whole movie. But that doesn't mean that should stop you from checking it out for yourself. But what about you? What was your final feelings about the film?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't necessarily think it's one of those ones where I'll be like, every single Halloween, I need to make sure that I need to watch this.
Well, and this was recommended to us. Usually on the show, it's been like one of my all-time favorites or one of your all-time favorites. So this one is one that's, outside of both of our spaces. So I think that makes sense.
But that being said, while it was one that we weren't acquainted with beforehand, I think it definitely was enjoyable, and it had a lot of the things that we both really enjoy in movies, and it clearly made me sit and think. So I'd say it was a pretty darn good movie there.
I think so too. No, I was not mad when we were done watching it.
Yeah.
So, but if that's all your thoughts, then I guess it's time to wrap up this episode.
I think so.
But I want to remind everybody that when we come back next, we'll very likely be talking about Murder Party. We have some fan suggested episodes we want to do, and we were even debating doing Event Horizon. So feel free to comment or email us at weeklyspooky@gmail.com if that's the kind of thing you want to see. And if you love what we're doing here, please consider supporting us on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you get a bonus episode every month, all kinds of behind the scenes content, and so very much more. And speaking of them, the folks at Patreon, I want to say an extra special thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little bit more to hear their names on the show. And they are Johnny Nix, Bobbletopia.com, Megan Hua, Julia Kirsch, Brent McCullough, Steve King, Karen Ouimet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all for supporting us. And if you want to join that list of names, just go to weeklyspooky.com, click on Patreon, and make it happen, baby. So I am Enrique Couto here with
Rachel Rodolphe.
And we will be back sooner than you think with even more cutting deep into horror. And I want to say a special thank you to our producer, Dan Wilder, our executive producer, Rob Fields, and our composer, Ray Mattis, who you are going to get to jam out to his tunes as we leave you. Until next time, make sure to go out to the woods, but pack better snacks.